Hey, thanks for being a part of the conversation. Let's do some pod crashing. Episode number 309 is with Simon Sinek, the host of the podcast, A Bit of Optimism.
Hey, Ara, how you doing?
Absolutely.
I'm very well. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, I want to thank you for creating this podcast, A Bit of Optimism. How was it planted inside your heart that it was like, okay, I've got to do this. Let's take the necessary steps.
It started during COVID, to be honest with you. It was a dark time. There was a lot of uncertainty. We didn't know what was going on. And it was my sister who said to me, I think you need to like do a podcast and spread a bit of optimism. And we started by producing it ourselves. That's just what we just put it out there. None of us expected it to last, to be honest. But people really liked it, so we just kept doing it. We've had over 100 episodes now, and we're on iHeart, which is like quite an honor. So yeah, it's put us all by surprise.
Oh my God, you said my magic number, 100. And the reason why I say that is because when I go into these schools of broadcasting and I talk about podcasting, I will look at them in the soul and say, you aren't doing any type of podcasting unless you hit 100th episode. And you've done it, dude. You've got a real podcast.
I got a real podcast. I got a thing. I made a thing.
Is it something that came to you as a child for the optimism? Because I remember my grandmother and even my mother always saying, you've got to learn how to be optimistic, because we live in a society where it is really, really difficult to even reach that area.
I mean, I think I was always a happy-go-lucky kid. And later in life, you realize that that's actually a skill, to see the brighter side of things. But what I've learned about optimism is we all have the opportunity and ability to be optimistic. All you need is somebody who believes in you, somebody who loves you. Believe it or not, it's about relationships. With the courage to see the bright side in things. All you need is one person who says, I believe in you. You got this. I love you. And it's amazing our ability to change our point of view when we feel we're not alone in any kind of difficulty. So believe it or not, being an optimist is not about just like forcing yourself to change your mindset. That's very hard, but it's about fostering relationships.
How do you deal with those people that don't look at your optimistic lifestyle as being a positive? Because I had an operations manager in radio look at me one day and he says, I don't need that side of you. You need to put that guy away and I need you to get dirty with me. And it's like, what? No, I live off being optimistic.
I mean, different strokes for different folks, I guess. I've never been one to try and convince people that I'm right and they're wrong.
Right.
And there are absolutely people who think I'm naive, and there are absolutely people who think I'm unrealistic, and I'm okay with that. I think it's idealism that changes the world. You have to view the world, in idealistic terms, to believe that things are possible. That's what gives you the energy to try and change it, to try and build it. No business was ever built on pessimism.
Right.
No, our country was founded on optimism. It's a uniquely American trait to be naively optimistic. I'll just, as a quick aside, we celebrate our independence on July 4th, 1776.
Yes.
No. July 4th, 1776 is when we signed the Declaration of Independence. We didn't win our independence until September 3rd, 1783, when the Revolutionary War came to an end.
Right.
That's so American that we celebrate our independence on the day we thought about it, not the day we had it.
Oh, my God. That's the kind of content that I love looking up and studying for different iHeart radio shows and stuff like that, where it's like, you take a thought like that. We are celebrating our independence, but yet we're getting it wrong. I love that kind of content, dude.
I just think it's very American, and I absolutely love it. So I'm proud to be an optimist.
When it comes to building a bright future, we have to be together, don't we? I mean, it's not a one-sided solo performance.
100%. I mean, like, nobody ever accomplished anything worth accomplishing by themselves. Mm-hmm. And working together, especially with people who disagree with us, I think people who disagree with us is, are sometimes incredibly valuable because they have a point of view that they're revealing to us our blind spots, and learning to embrace people who disagree with us. I mean, just think of it like a personal relationship, right? Like in your own relationships, can you imagine having a fight with somebody who disagreed with you every time? And if all you did was try and shut them down and prove to them that you're right and they're wrong, like that relationship is not going to last. And so now if you exaggerate that, you add a few million people to it, like doesn't bode well. And so as we said before, if you think about it like a marriage, like we have to live in the same house. We don't have a choice, mm-hmm. right? We're together. Like this is a thing. And the leader is the one who learns that skill of listening and learns to make the other person feel heard. And as we said, like when we do that, only then does it create the conditions where the other person's willing to listen to you.
I got to tell you, Simon, that's every bit the reason why I created the podcast Vocal Defrag. It's because, who am I arguing with? I kept asking that question. Who am I being challenged by? Me. So I needed to start asking myself the questions, and then when I would give it an answer, question that answer.
I mean, it's like the scientific method, right? Like scientists, always in doubt of their own, of themselves, at least the good ones. And I try and live my life that way. Like I put my ideas out there. None of my books are complete.
Yes.
They're ideas and theories. I'm constantly learning about my own work. I don't consider myself an expert in anything. I consider myself a student. Maybe I'm a more advanced student in some subjects than others, but I'm always a student. And I love when people, not just, contrarians, but people who actually want to have a debate to advance an idea. It's me and them versus the idea, not me versus them.
Yeah.
Like those are my favorite conversations to have. But you're absolutely right. Like learning is the greatest thing in the world, and becoming better versions of ourselves is epic. But you have to be open to the idea that there's more to learn.
People that tune into your podcast are, they wake up injured. What is it that we're doing wrong when we wake up in that bad mood, or we wake up where it's like, I don't want to go to work. And it's almost like we're setting ourselves up for failure.
But it's also human. Oh. I think sometimes we beat ourselves up for being in a bad mood. Like, yes, I'm an optimist. Yes, I'm an unshakable optimist, but I'm also a human being.
Yeah.
I have bad days. I wake up grumpy. I don't want to do things, of course. And I think we just have to accept it and give ourselves a little bit of grace. If we get stuck in these moods for very long periods of time, well, that's a problem. That's where we need to seek help. But being a little bit grumpy on a day-to-day basis, I'm not a morning person. Don't catch me in the morning. I'm pretty damn grumpy. But I don't think it's a character flaw.
I've got to have my daily writing first. The very first thing I do when I get up is I sit down behind my 3 pages and get those babies out there. And then, to kind of cleanse the mind before I step into the studio.
Wow, that's impressive. I appreciate the discipline. For me, it's a cup of coffee, but I appreciate the discipline. I think this. I think such a good question, right? Which is routine. Which is, I always envy people that have that discipline of routine. That you get up every day and you write 3 pages. Like my style is the opposite. I have days and weeks of guilt and self-loathing, punctuated by moments of sheer brilliance. The problem is I don't know when they strike. So it's kind of more meandering, to be honest.
Yeah, but doesn't that serve as fuel, though? I mean, because I love those moments where it gets a little bit dark, because I'm going, ooh, I'm here to learn something right now. Ooh, give it to me.
Yeah, I like not knowing things, to be honest with you. I kind of like being the idiot in the room, I like being around people who are smarter than me and who've done more than me, because it's an uncomfortable feeling. Like it is not, it feels good when you're the smartest guy in the room. It feels good when you think you're the smartest guy in the room. It does not feel good when you're being, it's clear to you that you are the dumbest guy in the room, But for me, that's an opportunity, like to ask questions. And I've learned to be okay with it. I've learned to say, hey, I don't understand this. I'll tell you a quick funny story that sort of proves the value of being an idiot. So here's a challenge for you and your listeners. You'd be amazed how often we lie.
Yep.
Lying is an important social convention. Somebody gives you a gift for Christmas. It's the ugliest thing you've ever seen in your life. It's the ugliest sweater ever. And they say, what do you think? And we say, oh my God, I love it. Total lie. But we say that because we don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, right? You'd be amazed how often we do it. Like the waiter comes over and says, how's your meal? And you're like, yeah, it's good. 5 minutes ago, you're complaining how bad it was. We don't want confrontation. We don't want to hurt someone's feelings, whatever it is. So try this thing. Try this little this challenge. Don't tell a single lie for the next 48 hours. Zero. Now, you can't be mean. Can't be mean. Like, do I look fat in these jeans? I like the other jeans better. You don't have to be mean, right? But you cannot tell a single lie. And so I took this challenge upon myself. I gave it a try. And by sheer coincidence, I happened to have a trip to Washington, D.C., and I had a meeting with the senior speechwriter for some politician, right? And I sat down with her in this beautiful office with vaulted ceilings in the Capitol. And the first question she asked me is, how much research have you done on the congressman? And any other day, to save face, I would have said a little,
Yeah.
right? Just because I don't want to be an idiot. I don't want to show disrespect or look like I'm unprepared. But I took this challenge, and I literally, in my mind, I went, oh, come on, you know? And I looked at her and I said, none.
Yeah.
And she goes, okay, well, let me tell you then. She wasn't asking me to test me. She was asking me because she wanted to understand the baseline. And by me saying none, she told me everything I needed to know.
Wow.
If I had said some, she wouldn't have told me as much. Now, she could have also said, you came to a meeting and you weren't prepared. Like, I could have been humiliated. That absolutely was an option. But what I learned was being the idiot in the room, being willing to say, I don't know, or I don't know anything, or I haven't checked, actually served me a lot better because other people were willing to tell me what I needed to know.
You know what? You remind me of what I call a silent wolf. You stand on the sidelines and you watch, you observe, you study, you listen, you converse. It's like you are there, and then now you can walk through it.
I mean, yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for wanting to be the student, wanting to be the one who's learning. I think, we all like to feel, like I said, we all like to feel smart. And sometimes I think we lie to ourselves and we lie to others about how much we know and how much we pretend to know. And it's amazing. And you can pick almost any subject. And most of us will repeat lines we've heard on television. Yeah. But do we actually know what we're talking about? And I think it takes a lot of courage to say, I'm repeating lines I heard on television. It sounds good, but if you question me, it's going to fall apart.
Oh, my God. Because, I challenge myself when I hear a soundbite from a politician, and I'll be writing about it in my daily writing. And then I'll go, hey, wait a second. Is that really what they said? And I'll go look it up. And what I put on paper was 100% wrong. It was my interpretation of what they said.
Yeah. Well, and the worst part about it is there are well-intentioned people who want to do their own research. And Google is an algorithm that doesn't tell you the truth. It tells you what it thinks you want to hear. Mm-hmm. That's what Google does. And so, like, they did a test a bunch of years ago where, like, people with right-leaning politics typed the word Benghazi, and they got all links from, like, right-leaning points of view. And people with left-leaning politics typed the word Benghazi, and they got all points of view that matched theirs. In other words, the echo chamber. And people who had sort of not independent politics, but were apolitical, they typed in the word Benghazi and they got travel advice.
See, yeah.
So even when we go to Google, even well-intentioned people trying to do research, it's not going to show us another point of view other than our own. So it's even hard in this day and age to do research to find out what the truth behind the things we hear on television is.
Oh, I got to get my Encyclopedia Britannicas in. I got to go back to them.
I know. I agree with you. Let's bring back encyclopedias. Yes.
One of the things that you put focus on the podcast, A Bit of Optimism, is this thing called atomic habits. That really caught my attention.
So James Clear wrote this amazing book called Atomic Habits. It's sold 15 million copies. I mean, and he came on the podcast and we talked about how to change our habits, like whether it's a habit we need to get into, like we talked about before, the discipline of waking up every single morning, or if we need to stop a bad habit. And he was great. He was a great guest. I loved him. Recently, I had a guest named Christina Tosi. She's the founder of Milk Bar. You can buy their cookies and their ice cream in your supermarket. She's amazing. And we talked about the power of friendship and how to be there for each other. And one of the stories we shared was I had a friend who was going through a really hard time. And I saw her and I said, hey, how are you? And she told me, yeah, it's been really hard the past couple of weeks. I'm like, well, why didn't you call me? Yep. Like, I'm here for you always. You know that. I didn't even hear from you. And she's like, I did. I texted you. I'm like, no, you didn't. And I look at my texts and it says, hey, what's up? Yeah. Hey, want to grab a bite? Hey, what are you doing? I'm like, you mean these texts, the ones that sound like every other text you ever sent me? Like, how do I know that you're in need? And she'd read an article that said that people who are struggling only need 8 minutes of attention from a friend to feel not alone again. So we made a rule with each other. We made a decision that when we're in need, we will text each other a code that says, do you have 8 minutes?
No,
and that basically means I need you. And Anybody can step out of a meeting for 8 minutes or step out of whatever they're doing for 8 minutes to be there for a friend. You can get to them more later, but do you have 8 minutes is the code we use when we really need each other.
Simon, you just gave me a whole entire different texture for a bit of optimism here, because now when I'm in the car and you're in there and you're talking with me, you're sharing me with your thoughts, I'm getting my 8 minutes with you, dude.
Oh, you're too kind. But 8 minutes is really a code for you to see somebody, a friend who loves you, a friend who's going to be there for you in the hard times.
The conversation with Ty, where believing that awkwardness, always gets a bad rap. Yeah, because we're all so hard on ourselves when we're awkward. But it's like, wow, it kind of feels good to be not like anybody else.
Oh, he was an amazing guest. So he studies exactly what you said. He studies awkwardness.
Yeah.
And he's awkward and I'm awkward. And it was really amazing. And basically what we found is, like, I asked the questions like, how did awkward people who aren't that social, if we're social animals, who struggle to make friends or are awkward at parties, awkward at, sometimes in social interactions, evolutionarily, how did we survive? And he says, it's the awkward people are very often the observers, because they're less socially fluent, so they're not just like spewing stuff, but they're taking it all in, and they actually serve a very valuable role in society. And there's a lot of innovation that comes out of the awkward people. The awkward people are very often the big thinkers and the innovators, because they're observing the world and what the world needs. But he was so wonderful, and he really, for anybody who's ever been sort of like awkward in a social situation or uncomfortable at a bar and didn't know how to respond at a dinner party or whatever it is, it's a great episode that really makes you realize you have a superpower.
Mm-hmm. You make people feel comfortable. Where does that art come from? I mean, what is your background to where you the way that you share your message? It's like we've known each other for a long time.
Oh, you're too kind. I don't know how to answer the question. It's a good question. I've never really been asked it before. I think it's just that I don't think of myself as sort of above or better than anyone. Yeah. I've been blessed with a bully pulpit. I've been given the opportunity to share my ideas. People have embraced my ideas, whether they've watched talks or listened to podcasts or read books that I've put out there. And I'm fully aware that my message only spreads and my ideas only spread because of the people who spread them.
Oh, yeah.
It's not because of me and some marketing budget. So I kind of show up in gratitude every day.
Yep.
And I think that I've got something to learn from everybody. I have a point of view. Absolutely. I'm not afraid of sharing my point of view. But I'm interested in what you have to say as well. So I'm showing up, like I said before, I show up with a student's mindset. I show up as a student, I show up to learn as opposed to, let me tell you a thing or two. And like, even when I do public speaking where it's not interactive, at least until I do Q&A, where it's me presenting. Before I go out on stage, I'll say to myself out loud, in the wings, I'll say, you're here to give.
That's it.
And I always remind myself that I'm showing up with a giver's heart.
That's it. God, I love where your heart is, dude. We've got to continue this talk in the future, man. Please come back to the show anytime. The door is always going to be open for you.
Oh, you're so kind. I would love that. Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Well, you be brilliant today, okay?
You too. Take care of yourself and take care of each other.